Alrighty, iPad hardware team, how are you gonna knock it out of the park this year? We'd love to talk to the iPadOS team about what the heck they're doing down there. No, that's not your department. You're just talking about hardware. So what do you want to make happen? I don't know. Is there a chip faster than the M1 we could put in here? The M2? Kind of. Alright, I guess we'll take the M2 chip, and MacBooks have MagSafe. I guess we could use MagSafe. Oh, okay. Do you mean the iPhone MagSafe or the MacBook MagSafe? Yeah, whichever, whatever works for you. Okay, good, but is there anything that could really push revenues higher with this generation of iPad? Well, I mean, I guess we could, no, that's evil. We shouldn't do that. Evil? Oh, please, tell me, what is it? I want to hear. Well, I was just thinking, like, we could easily redesign the smart connector to be a little bit different. That way none of their old keyboard cases work and they have to buy all new ones. Oh my goodness, that's a fantastic idea. You're getting a raise. Oh, really? How much? Half the current inflation rate. Okay, I walked right into that one, didn't I? Let's begin. So we've had a very confusing assortment of rumors surrounding the M2 iPad Pro. So there's a couple things that have been rumored so far. Of course, nothing is confirmed. There's a lot of false information right now that you gotta cipher through and take everything with a grain of salt. But we do assume that just like the iPad Pro got the M1 chip, it's probably gonna get the M2 chip. And likely because the iPad Pro is marketed towards a more pro demographic, keyword on just marketed, I don't know how well it does for the pros, but it will likely be at an event that's not the iPhone 14 event next month, so I would expect maybe around October or November. But yes, okay, it gets the M2 chip, which is marginally faster, especially with a fanless design, but knowing how Apple cheaped out on the NANDs, basically the storage devices used on the M2 MacBook Air and the M2 MacBook Pro, I don't see why the iPad Pro M2 should be any different. Like, why should that get any special treatment, especially considering it's probably gonna start at less money than even the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and it's using less space. It has less circuitry to work with, so that's why I'm partially expecting that read and write speeds might take another hit with the iPad Pro, or they're gonna raise the default storage option to no longer have 128 gigs, and that would drive up the price, so Apple could justify it costing $1,200 or more just by them saying that, well, it comes with 256 gig by default now, and it has the M2 chip, so it's so much faster. But aside from little performance issues like that, we've also gone back and forth for months now about what the heck this sort of wireless charging on an iPad is supposed to look like, and I'm sorry. I know some people think that the iPad is supposed to just be like a slightly different version of the iPhone, but wireless charging on the iPad literally is stupid and makes no sense. Like, I'm a big fan of wireless charging, okay? I never plug the lightning cable into my AirPods. I exclusively charge them with my MagSafe Duo. I pretty much only charge my iPhone via MagSafe. I hardly ever plug it in with a lightning cable, and I still see no real point in doing wireless charging because the iPad is so much bigger and it's so incredibly common for them to be in cases, even if it's not Apple cases. Like my mother-in-law, my grandma, they use iPads as well, but they use these little accessories on the back that allow them to prop themselves up and stand upright because the iPads don't have kickstands built into them. So the accessory market for getting iPads to stand upright is very, very popular and very common. So whether you're trying to put a big glass Apple logo or trying to switch the whole thing to glass, there's a very few number of people I think that would actually utilize iPhone level MagSafe on the back. Plus it would completely render all of our old iPad accessories useless because they don't have the proper magnet alignments on the inside, which means you would have to buy new accessories, even folio covers, just for MagSafe to work. And even if you got MagSafe working, like, how is that more convenient? Most people, when they're done using their iPads, they fold them up and like set them down. Are you trying to tell me people are going to want to put a singular little MagSafe puck on their nightstand just so that they can try to align the iPad exactly right on the middle, and that's supposed to save time opposed to just a cable? Plus this usually requires higher wattage and MagSafe is slower. So don't get me wrong, like, I'm a fan of wireless charging, but only on devices where it makes sense. Makes sense on the Apple Watch, makes sense on AirPods, makes sense on the iPhone. On this device, no, I don't really see much of a point. The glass back would just make it more fragile and more prone to breaking. It would make the iPad heavier, and I've seen renders of what MagSafe charging the iPad would look like. Like, who would actually do that? Are you gonna take your iPad out of its case and put it face down just so that you can drop a little MagSafe puck on the back? No, like, people don't use their iPads that way, so if that ends up being real, I think it's royally stupid. And even if they add MacBook MagSafe charging on the thing, is that supposed to save an immense amount of time compared to just a USB-C port? I mean, it's a single-use port that allows for charging, but it's probably only going to be on one side. And once you got the Magic Keyboard case with your iPad, you have USB-C on either side for power anyway. And maybe the argument is just trying to leave the Thunderbolt port vacant for Thunderbolt accessories you want to use. That way you can charge it through MagSafe. But if you're getting the keyboard case, you already have a USB-C charge port on the other side that you can easily connect to. And if you want to take your iPad away from the case, you can just pull it off magnetically because it's charging through the smart connector, which brings us to today's most recent report from Macatakara, claiming that on the next generation iPad Pro, Apple is testing a new version of the smart connector with 4 pins, and he even said that it would be on the bottom and the top of the iPad. So for one, I guess that could allow for faster charging through the smart connector. Okay, there's some fast charging improvements there, but the main reason I think that's royally gonna suck is it means that all of your $400 keyboard cases, yes, sales tax is a thing, are suddenly going to become useless if you upgrade to the M2 iPad Pro. So remember back when the second generation Magic Keyboard case came out and we had that big panic on whether or not it would work with the 2018 iPad Pros, and Apple customer support wouldn't give us a straight answer. They were like, yeah, you might have to buy a new case. I guess Apple saw that panic and looked at it as opportunity because they were like, oh, well, you know, your 2018 iPad Pro can work with the new keyboard case, but maybe we should change the keyboard case. That would be a great way to upsell people to spend more money on their iPad upgrades. And you know, a ton of people are gonna go out and do that knowing that their old keyboard cases don't work. But I mean, hey, given the fabric and silicone they make these things out of, maybe it's just a good idea to replace your keyboard case every couple of years because they don't look too good after just a couple of years of use. They scratch and they collect oils and they start falling apart on you. It's not pretty. But either way, that means that if there's price hikes on the iPad Pro line, they might also still require you to get additional accessories that are not backwards compatible. That's why I guess I'm not terribly excited about this generation of iPad Pro, because I know the CPU and GPU is not going to perform that much better. All of our major issues with the iPad come down to its operating system and the apps available to it, and the hardware upgrades are just going to be trying to justify charging as much as they can for people's iPad purchases by going through checkout and being like, oh, you should add this, oh, you should add this. And wireless charging in any way, shape, or form I don't think is going to be too useful. The smart connector is probably the closest you can get to inductive charging because you can kind of just drop your iPad on the keyboard case and pull it off when you're done. But after seeing Apple kind of software restrict Stage Manager and external monitor support to the M1 iPads, I'm now convinced that they may start continuing that stuff with future generations of iPads, where it's not about coming up with capabilities that are only possible with new silicon or new generations. It's like intentionally leaving out prior generations so that they can justify more iPad revenue coming in because, oh, sorry, you don't get that feature, you gotta buy a new one. So what features in iPadOS 17 do you think they'll come up with that are exclusive to the M2 iPad Pro that they won't bring to the M1 because it just doesn't have that raw power they were looking for? All your hopes and dreams that are gonna be crushed on the M2 iPad Pro, let me know what you're thinking down below. This is your Apple Shape here, and I'll see you in the next one.